All right, guys. This is breaking news. Hopefully, you can hear me. Let me know in the chat if you can hear my mic. I just switched my computer on and we went live. So I'll give everybody a chance to show up and then we're going to read this article. Who is this article by? I want to say it's the Daily Mail, right? I'm pretty sure it's the Daily Mail. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Let me double check who put this article out. Big shout out to the Sleuth crew for sending this to me right away. I appreciate you guys. So this is crazy. I've only read the first half, and I said we got to share this. And Don, thank you, by the way. I appreciate you, my friend. Okay. So the link was sent by the Sleuth crew. Daily Mail. Daily Mail, and it looks like it was just put out sometime this morning. So it looks like we were right again, guys. Remember, we were talking about why Richard Allen's mother would not testify against him. It meant that she had nothing good to say, nothing helpful. She didn't want to perjure herself otherwise. Now, come to find out, the murder sheet, doing what they do best. Their book, I think it comes out pretty soon. Hold on. I think I have some information on the book. So they got a book coming out this month called The Shadow of the Bridge. I think it comes out like on the 25th or something. Not quite sure. Well, it says it's available on Amazon already. Oh, no, it says hardcover August 26th. So this must be for Kindle or audiobook. Let me click on the hardcover and see what it says. Oh, yeah, you have to pre-order it. So it's coming out August 26th. I think I'm going to get me a copy. I think I'm going to pre-order that. Welcome in, Mark. And 4 hens. All right, looks like we have 19 people in here. Let's go ahead and pull this up on the screen. I know this is kind of impromptu, but this was just sent to me. And I'm just baffled by how correct we were on this. I mean, we're getting good at what we're doing here. We were right about this. So this was by Rachel Sharp, crime correspondent, sat down with the murder sheet. It was put out earlier this morning. So we were right about Richard Allen's mom. She told the murder sheet that he was acting funny, right? She didn't want to get up on the stand and talk about that. That wouldn't have been helpful, but she knows. All right. I'm not sure how long this is going to be. We'll read the article. We'll talk for a bit. I just wanted to get this out there. You know, this is definitely a victory for us and very devastating for anybody who is pro Richard Allen. This is like the final nail in the coffin. This is almost as good as Brian Koberger confessing. Right? There's a reason his wife didn't testify. There's a reason his mother didn't testify. There's a reason all of that never happened. So let's read this. When best friends Abby Williams and Libby German failed to return from the local walking trails on February 13th, 2017, the residents of Delphi dropped everything to join in the search. When the girls' mutilated bodies were discovered in the woods the next day, the tight-knit Indiana town wrapped its arms around the families and flooded police with tips to help catch their killer. But within one local family, a 45-year-old man, a husband, father, and son, was making bizarre comments about the murders and actively discouraging his relatives from joining the community's efforts. They were strange moments and conversations that Richard Allen's mom and wife brushed off at the time, but which came flooding back to them 5 years later when he was finally unmasked as the girl's killer. Now, Allen's disturbing interactions with the woman in his life and the immediate aftermath of the murders are revealed for the first time in a new book, Shadow of the Bridge: The Delphi Murders and the Dark Side of the American Heartland. The book from journalist Anya Kane and attorney Kevin Greenlee, the husband and wife team behind the Murder Sheet podcast, delves into the murders, the investigation, and Allen's trial. Following hundreds of interviews with investigators, the victims' families, and others close to the case. In an exclusive interview ahead of its release, Kane and Greenlee told the Daily Mail, about a damning conversation between Allen and his mom, Janice Allen. The authors learned from investigators that a few days after 14-year-old Libby and 13-year-old Abby were killed, Janice had received a strange phone call from her son. He sounded nervous and told her, "They're going to pin this on me." Allen told his mom he had been on the trails the day the girls were murdered and had been smoking a cigarette. He claimed investigators might find the cigarette butt, collect his DNA from it, and use it to tie him to the crime scene, Janice later told police. Allen's mom found the conversation odd, the authors revealed, but she kept it to herself for years. When her son was arrested in October of 2022, Janice recalled the strange conversation and told police. In quotations, "We learned from investigators that the conversation definitely stuck in her mind to the point where she felt she should bring it up to investigators," Kane said. "It's not something where she thought, oh, that's just Richard being Richard, and then forgot about it. I think that's significant." Kane believes Allen was already preparing his family for his looming arrest, and for the narrative he continues to push that he is an innocent victim of a miscarriage of justice. He was not taking any responsibility. He was almost bracing them for his arrest by claiming he would become a helpless victim of fate, she said. This wasn't the only clue that Allen was the child killer hiding in plain sight in the close-knit town of 3,000 residents. During the roughly 24-hour period when the girls were missing, Kathy Allen, Allen's wife of 34 years and the mother of his adult daughter, Brittany, was among those wanting to try to help bring them home. When these girls went missing, Delphi went into overdrive. Employers were giving their employees a day off work to search. People were gathering together and volunteering. This is exactly what the character of Delphi is like. If your neighbor is in trouble, you're going to help them, no questions asked, Kane said. Kathy was very much in the spirit of that. She wanted to go to the trails to help search. But Allen persuaded his wife not to get involved, Kane and Greenlee revealed. It is not clear exactly what he said, but it was enough to stop Kathy from joining the search. Kathy also had to convince her husband to contact the police to tell them he was on the trails that day, the book reveals. He had been so reluctant to call in the tip, right? He had to call in the tip or his wife was going to tip his ass in. More than 5 years passed before Allen was arrested for the murders after a clerical error meant his tip fell through the cracks. When it resurfaced in October of 2022, Allen was re-interviewed and confirmed he was wearing the same outfit, blue jeans and a Carhartt jacket, as the man caught on the camera by the victims. In their final moments, Libby had captured a video of the killer following them over the rickety Monon High Bridge. In it, the man was heard racking a gun and ordering the terrified guys down the hill. I don't know if there was any racking of a gun, but definitely guys down the hill, right? Sounding just like Richard Allen. Subjective, yes. Police discovered the video on Libby's phone found beneath Abby's body. A search executed at the Allen home uncovered a Bridge Guy starter kit consisting of blue jeans and a Carhartt jacket, a pistol which ballistics experts matched to an unspent bullet found between the girls' bodies. He was charged with the murders. In the new book, Greenlee and Kane present Allen as someone capable of committing extreme, senseless violence and then returning to apparent normalcy, right? Compartmentalization, where you can put your demon in a box, hide it in your subconscious mind, and don't allow it to touch any of the normalcy that you got going on. You're able to just hide it, tuck it away until your next episode. This was the most evident in a chilling video jurors never got to see at his trial. The footage captured Allen inside his cell at Cass County Jail. He went from 0 to 60. 1 minute, he's sitting there having a normal time in his cell, and then he's screaming and threatening to kill correctional officers, Kane said. At one point, he then made a throat-slitting motion across his own throat, echoing the sick way he murdered Libby and Abby. Moments later, Allen was calm again. I think that was what Abby and Libby saw that day, a man who was capable of being completely normal and calm, going into an absolute frenzy, Kane said. Now, what did I describe earlier today during my live stream, right? A man in an absolute frenzy who calmed down and then killed his next victim in complete cold blood, calculated cold blood. But I agree with this sentiment here. Likewise, after committing the murders, Allen had largely snapped back to normal life. But when Allen went on trial in the fall of 2024, his violent side emerged yet again. For the first time, Kane and Greenlee reveal that Allen made several chilling threats of violence towards the prosecutor and judge inside the courtroom at his murder trial. In one disturbing moment, he threatened to attack lead prosecutor Nicholas McClelland because he pointed at him in court. Richard Allen said something to the effect of, "If he keeps pointing at me, I'll jump up there and hurt him," Kane said. This threat got back to McClelland, who wanted to show Allen he was not the least bit intimidated by him. So he actually made a point of pointing at Allen during his closing argument. Allen didn't follow through on his threat, perhaps because McClelland is an adult man who can handle himself, unlike two little girls in the woods alone at gunpoint, Kane said. But this behavior formed part of a pattern where Allen would use threats of violence to control others. He used a gun to threaten violence against Abby and Libby. That's how he was able to abduct them. He's someone who uses threats to get his way, Kane said. Inside the courtroom, Allen also used his threats of violence to wield control and power over his own family, the authors learned. Kane and Greenlee said Allen warned his family he would attack Judge Frangol if they defied his orders not to attend his sentencing. Allen swore he would harm the judge if he did not get what he wanted. He did not wish his family to see him at his most vulnerable, right? Like a typical a psychopath. They do have emotions and they care about certain, they do care, but it's only about themselves. It's the only time they'll show emotions. Shackled and awaiting to learn his fate, the authors reveal in the book. He told his relatives that if he saw them at the hearing, he would hurt Goal. Alan got what he wanted. His wife, mother, stepfather, daughter, and sister were all absent from his sentencing. He seemingly wanted to control what his family did and did not see in court. So, to get them to comply with his wishes, he decided to threaten the judge, Kane said. In November of 2024, the 52-year-old was convicted on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of felony murder before 2 of the counts were vacated under double jeopardy rules. Judge Gall sentenced him to a maximum penalty of 130 years in prison. Alan's wife continues to stand by him and believes in his innocence, despite his conviction, threats of violence, and those bizarre comments around the time of the murders. That is also despite Alan confessing to the murder 61 times in jailhouse phone calls to her and Janice, and in meetings with the prison psychologist ahead of his trial. Whatever misgivings Alan's family had about him early on, they changed their tune entirely and became his greatest champions, Kane said. Alan is appealing his conviction. He is now in custody in Oklahoma following an interstate prison swap. As far as Greenlee and Kane are concerned, if it weren't for the brave actions of Abby and Libby, the child killer might still be walking free now, hiding in plain sight in the close-knit Delphi community. Greenlee explained how the Bridge Guy video locked down the evidence, proving Alan as the girl's killer. The timestamp of the video matched the time Alan placed himself on the trails. The clothing Bridge Guy was wearing matched the outfit Alan placed himself in. The audio captured Alan's voice and the sound of his gun racking. That is up for debate. Cementing his connection to the unspent bullet, which is really, where you need to rest your case. The unspent bullet and the tool marks. Doesn't matter if you fire it, if it's heated up, it doesn't matter. It would be even more unlikely for something weird to happen that's completely different than what happened during the day of the murders, and then it match with Richard Allen's gun. Think about how impossible that would be, right? We have some kind of weird anomaly caused by heat and them firing the gun, and that causes their test to match Richard Allen's bullet. Like, think about how impossible that would be. The video locked Richard Allen into being Bridge Guy. Abby and Libby helped solve their own case, he said. Yep, it locked in the timeline. Kane added, it's hard to know what would have happened without it, but I think it would have been a much more difficult case for sure. These girls had the presence of mind to actually help solve their own murders, and there's something very poignant and incredible about that. Shadow of the Bridge, The Delphi Murders and the Dark Side of the American Heartland by Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee will be published by Pegasus on August 25th. Apparently, you can go read it if you have a Kindle. Available to buy on Amazon, bookshop.org, Simon & Schuster, Audible, and Barnes & Noble. All right, guys, what do you have to say about this? Let me go back up to the top. So he told Kathy, his mom, he told everybody, if you come to court, I'm going to hurt Judge Goal. That doesn't sound like an innocent person. That sounds like somebody who is a manipulator and doesn't want to be embarrassed. Let's see here. The authors learned from investigators that a few days after 14-year-old Libby and 13-year-old Abby were killed. So this is just a few days later. Okay, so this must have been right after he met. So he met with Dan Doolin. He must have thought that he was going to go to jail right there. See, he would have gone to jail too if they wouldn't have lost that tip. So whatever happened, like honestly, he would have been caught right then and there. And he thought he was going to get caught. So it says here a few days after Libby and Abby were killed, a few days later is when he went down to the police station. Big fishy. Well, the thing about tool mark evidence is you can't 100% rule out any gun. It's just like a fingerprint, right? You can't rule out the fact that somebody else has that exact fingerprint. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to make it a statistical improbability. So statistically, it would be close to impossible for this to be anybody else's gun. I can't say with certainty that it's not another gun like Brad Weber's. They have to say that. Anytime you do ballistics or firearm or fingerprint, you have to say that, right? It's like condoms. They're 99.9% effective. So there's that 1% chance, hey, maybe it did belong to Brad Weber's. But statistically, it's not likely. Yep, that's exactly what happened. So right around the time he's talking, right, and his wife forced him to. He didn't want her going out there. Don't get involved. Don't draw any attention to me. But he's realizing that it's drawing attention to him. So now he has to step in. He has to start taking countermeasures. He's starting to realize that. If I don't take countermeasures, I'm going to be pinned into a corner. If I don't go and do what my wife is asking me, she's going to become suspicious of me. So he then goes, tips himself in, meets with Dan Doolin, thinks for sure he's getting arrested after that. So that's when he probably called his mother, right? Alan told his mom he had been on the trails the day the girls were murdered and had been smoking a cigarette. They found a cigarette. He claimed investigators might find the cigarette butt, collect his DNA from it, and use it to tie him to the crime scene. That's what Janice later told police. So why didn't she get up on the stand? Because the defense team couldn't use her. And who was the first person to tell you that? Right here. You heard it here first. So this proves that I was right, that we were right. And thanks to the Murder Sheet and their new book, we have proof. So shout out to the Murder Sheet, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee for that hard work. We appreciate the information. And we'll probably hang out here another 5-10 minutes if you guys have anything to add. If not, we'll just bounce. That is the breaking news. Richard Allen's mom was suspicious of him. That's why she did not testify. She even stated that to police. And apparently Richard Allen, according to the Murder Sheet, was threatening his entire family that if they showed up to the sentencing, that he would harm Judge Gold. Like he could, right? What the hell is he going to do? Exactly, Jari. Good to see you, by the way. And the prosecution, yeah, they could have used her. It would have been incredible for them. And what's crazy is that after Judge Gold found out that he was threatening, I bet you she said, well, that's not allowed in for whatever reason. You know, has nothing to do with the case. Yep, absolutely, Mark. Fishy, did you see Daniel Nations going down for murder? Yeah, he's wanted for a homicide, I think in Utah, Moab. He was suspected of killing a man with a rifle and attacking people with hatchets on the trail. That's why they were looking at him for the Delphi murders. But apparently he wasn't anywhere around. Yeah, so he's been a suspect in that murder for a long time. Some guy was riding his bike apparently and was killed with the .22 rifle. Daniel Nations, I believe, was pulled over somewhere not too far from the crime scene, and they found a .22 rifle in the back of his truck. Hit and run. Ooh, interesting. I have to take a look at that. Oh shit, 1 day ago. That's crazy. Here, let's take a look at this. Here, we'll watch this and then get out of here. Just gotta wait for this commercial to end. Yep, absolutely, bootleg. Absolutely. Let me pause this.
This man facing a murder charge after a fatal hit and run in Colorado Springs. He is the same suspect charged in a hatchet attack in Indiana in 2017. 39-year-old Daniel Nations was arrested after a road rage incident on July 24th. Colorado Springs police say he ran over a man who confronted him and then took off. Back in 2017, Nations was charged in connection with hatchet attacks in El Paso County, and people in Indiana say he also threatened them with a hatchet and may be connected to several other murders in that state.
Yeah, definitely somebody to be leery of.
Real well, because there was a lot of cows.
Yeah, that's why everybody was actually really interested in Daniel Nations early on, because they didn't know a whole lot about the victimology and the criminology and what weapons were used and what type of wounds were inflicted. They always thought, well, it could have been a hatchet, because all we really had was the leaked text messages kind of describing the crime scene and something about a head almost being severed off. So we thought it was much more brutal. All right, guys. Thanks again, Louise. You guys, shout out to the Sleuth Crew hitting it out the park once again. Thank you for helping me stay informed on these cases. I couldn't do it without you guys. That's it. When the book comes out, I'm going to read it, and then we'll review it. Until next time, I'll see you guys again real soon. Peace.
I rest my case.